The night was quiet, too quiet. A humid breeze swept through endless rows of cotton, whispering across the fields like a ghost. In the darkness, hundreds of people lay awake in cramped wooden cabins, listening, not for danger outside, but for footsteps, the kind that meant someone had been caught. Somewhere beyond the fields, a bell rang. Then another. The sound cut through the night like a blade. Everyone knew what came next. The overseer's lanterns would light the yard, bodies would be dragged out, and punishment, brutal, public, unforgettable, would unfold beneath the stars. On the cotton plantations of the American South, torture wasn't a secret. It was a system, a daily performance of control meant to break the body, silence the voice, and crush the human spirit. Tonight, we step into the shadows of that world. A world where cruelty was not just allowed, it was calculated. This is the dark history of torture and punishment on cotton plantations. Between the late 18th and mid-19th centuries, cotton plantations became the economic engine of the American South. But beneath the wealth, the booming trade, and the fields of white cotton lay a system built on suffering. Enslaved men, women, and children were forced to work from sunrise to sunset under brutal conditions. But their oppression didn't end in the fields. It extended into every moment of their lives. Control had to be constant. Obedience had to be absolute. And for plantation owners and overseers, fear was the most effective tool. Punishment wasn't merely reactionary. It was performative. Every lash of the whip, every collar locked around a neck, every forced gathering was meant to send a message. You are property. You will obey. These methods were cruel. But more than that, they were strategic, designed to break individuals, terrify communities, and maintain total dominance through pain and humiliation. In this episode, we'll step through the core methods of punishment, the escalations reserved for special cases, and the chilling psychological tactics that made fear itself a weapon. On every plantation, the whip was more than a tool, it was a language. Overseers carried it constantly, often draped over their shoulders like a badge of authority. Its crack echoed across the fields daily, a sound that could make hearts freeze instantly. Punishments usually began with a gathering. People were forced to stop their work and stand in silence as the victim was brought forward. There was no escape. Everyone had to watch. Overseers delivered lashings with calculated precision. Each strike was meant not just to injure but to humiliate. The pain was immediate, but the psychological impact often lasted far longer. People who were whipped were sometimes forced to return to work the same day, their wounds open, as a living reminder of what defiance cost. The whip didn't need to be used constantly to control the fields. Its presence alone was enough. A single crack could silence conversations, stiffen spines, and remind everyone of the unspoken rule: obedience. Or pain. Whippings were intense, but they ended. Iron collars did not. These heavy metal devices were locked around a person's neck for days, weeks, or even months. Some had spikes or bars jutting outward, making it impossible to lie down comfortably or move through doorways without pain. Others were fitted with small bells, forcing the wearer to announce every movement. People wearing collars couldn't hide. The sound of their bells carried across the plantation, marking them as disobedient. At night, the weight dug into their skin. Sleep was shallow. Pain was constant. The collar turned punishment into a 24-hour sentence, blending physical suffering with public humiliation. It transformed the human body into a walking warning sign. Shackles were used in countless ways. Sometimes, people were forced to work in chains, their ankles bound together, slowing every step. Others were locked in stocks or tied to posts for hours under the sun, exposed, immobilized, and made into objects of ridicule. Punishments involving shackles often lasted long after the initial crime. Escape attempts, for example, could result in permanent shackling during work hours. This meant moving slower, suffering injuries from the iron rubbing against the skin, and enduring constant scrutiny from overseers. Shackles turned the body into its own prison, a silent but powerful form of daily control. Physical pain was only one side of the system. Psychological torment played a crucial role. Some plantations had small jail structures or makeshift punishment boxes. Individuals might be locked inside for days, often in complete darkness with little food or water. The heat was suffocating during the day. The cold was brutal at night. Isolation wasn't just about discomfort, it was about breaking the will. People emerged disoriented, frightened, and often silent. Overseers knew that when physical punishment failed, loneliness and fear could finish the job. One of the cruelest aspects of plantation punishment was its public, performative nature. Punishments were rarely private. Overseers gathered entire workforces to watch as individuals were humiliated. Sometimes victims were forced to apologize publicly. Other times, they were left restrained in visible places for hours, even days, so everyone would see them. These punishments were carefully staged. Overseers gave speeches. The community was made to stand in silence, and every person watching understood that they could be next. Fear spread faster when it was seen. Not all punishments involved whips or chains. Sometimes cruelty came through withholding. Overseers reduced food rations, denied water breaks, or forced people to work deep into the night. Sleep deprivation, starvation, and exhaustion became tools of control. These punishments left no scars, but their effects were devastating. Bodies weakened, spirits cracked, and resistance grew harder. For overseers, this was the perfect weapon, invisible pain that broke people slowly. Without spectacle, but with lasting damage. On most plantations, whipping, collars, and public punishments were enough to keep people in line. But there were moments when these methods didn't work. Moments when someone refused to be broken. And that's when the punishments escalated. Overseers and slaveholders believed that if a person resisted repeatedly, tried to escape more than once, or inspired others to act, their punishment needed to become a warning carved into memory. Escape was the most feared act of resistance. Each time someone ran, it challenged the entire system. If one person could run, others might follow. So when escapees were caught, their punishment wasn't simply about retribution, it was about deterrence. People who attempted escape more than once were often subjected to prolonged, public punishment. Iron collars were locked around their necks for weeks or even months. Heavy shackles made every step difficult. Some were forced to work under constant watch, chained even in the fields. Others were paraded before the community, their collars fitted with bells that rang with each movement, a living announcement of their defiance. These bells ensured they could never blend in, never move silently. The goal wasn't just to punish the individual, it was to turn their body into a message. Escape will not be tolerated. The sound of those bells carried across fields, reminding everyone who heard them what happened when someone tried to flee. Sometimes, punishments extended beyond the individual entirely. If a group was suspected of conspiring to escape or resist, overseers would punish everyone, regardless of guilt. Work crews might be forced to line up and receive collective lashings. Food rations could be reduced for entire groups. Families might be separated, or people locked in isolation for extended periods. These mass punishments had a chilling effect. By targeting entire groups, overseers made resistance everyone's problem. A single act of defiance could lead to collective suffering, creating pressure within communities to police themselves. It was a form of psychological warfare, not just breaking individuals, but turning fear inward, ensuring that even those who dreamed of freedom would be silenced by the potential cost to others. At times, overseers staged punishments with theatrical precision, transforming them into public spectacles meant to echo across the plantation for years. Punishments were timed at dawn or dusk when everyone was gathered. People were forced to stand in silence as individuals were punished before their eyes. Overseers gave speeches, made accusations, and carried out punishments slowly, deliberately. For the victims, it was agony. For the witnesses, it was terror. These events were burned into collective memory. Even children were forced to attend, growing up in a world where violence was not just seen, it was staged as a lesson. Afterward, overseers didn't need to say much. The image lingered. The silence that followed was often more powerful than the event itself. It created an atmosphere of constant anticipation, the sense that punishment could happen at any moment, to anyone. Some individuals became known for their resistance. Those who spoke out, tried to escape repeatedly, or inspired others. Overseers viewed these people as dangerous because they represented hope. Instead of simply punishing them, they were sometimes sent to breaking plantations, places infamous for their cruelty. These were not ordinary plantations. They were designed to crush the will to resist through extreme, continuous punishment and deprivation. People sent there were isolated from their communities, stripped of any remaining support, and subjected to relentless labor and harsh conditions. The goal wasn't just to punish them for past actions, it was to erase their ability to inspire future resistance. When, or if, they returned, they often came back weakened, silent, and changed. Their transformation served as a final warning to those who had once looked to them as symbols of courage. What made these escalations truly powerful was that they didn't have to happen often. Overseers didn't need to carry out breaking punishments on everyone. They only needed to do it to a few, very publicly, very deliberately. News of these events spread quickly through plantation communities. Stories were whispered at night, passed from person to person. The threat of these extreme punishments became a weapon on its own. Even when no whips cracked and no bells rang, the fear remained, shaping behavior. People avoided eye contact, moved carefully, and measured their words. Overseers relied on this fear to maintain control more than on brute force. It was a psychological trap, a world where the possibility of punishment was often more powerful than the punishment itself. The story of punishment on cotton plantations is not just a history of cruelty, it's a history of control. Every method, every device, every spectacle was part of a system designed to strip away humanity and replace it with fear. It wasn't random, it was calculated. Overseers didn't just punish bodies, they shaped minds, molding entire communities through terror. But behind every act of violence, there was also resistance, quiet, defiant, and deeply human. Songs whispered at night, escape attempts under cover of darkness, glances exchanged in silence that said, "We are still here." These were acts of survival against a world built to break them. Today the fields may be quiet, the whips may be gone, but their echoes remain in the land, in the history, and in the collective memory of generations. These punishments were not just physical scars, they were psychological weapons whose impact still reverberates. Remembering these stories isn't about dwelling on the past. It's about refusing to look away. It's about understanding the machinery of cruelty, so it can never be disguised as discipline again, because fear only wins when silence follows. If you found this story powerful, don't let it disappear into history. Like, share, and subscribe to this channel to uncover more hidden chapters from humanity's darkest corners. Your support helps keep these stories alive, not to glorify cruelty, but to shine a light on it so it's never repeated.